Okay, this is part 7, the essence of word magic. And before I get started here, I just want to ask that if you enjoy the videos, please subscribe, like, and also feel free to ask questions and leave your comments as well. This is all about, there's a lot of learning going on here, and if you're enjoying these videos, really I encourage you to participate. And when I say participate, not only leaving your comments or questions, but taking this out into the real world and testing it for yourself, because that's where the real power is. Okay? So in part 7, what we're going to cover finally, after many weeks, months, is we're going to look at the actual meaning of word magic. We're going to look at the definition of magic and the operation that is occurring with word magic, right? There's a certain operation occurring, and how our world is organized around this operation. Everything in the world is organized around magic, and our modern world especially is organized around word magic. So we're going to look at we're going to take a deep dive into the definition of this thing called word magic. What is it? And of course we're going to look at magic, and we're going to look at the essence of words and the magical transformative properties of words. So it's all tied together, right? When I say word magic, I mean words, magic. It's all kind of together in a very real sense. So let's look at part 7. This is a very famous passage, right, from the Bible. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, right? This passage from the Bible establishes the Holy Scriptures as a magic book of spells, right? In the sense that Heraclitus presumably understood it. After all, it was Heraclitus, a pre-Socratic philosopher born and educated in the Persian Empire, right, some 500 years BC. There seems no doubt that the seemingly paradoxical nature of his work was due to the Eastern influences of his philosophy, as interpreted through the Western mind of scholars which studied him. So what I'm saying is Heraclitus was there are heavy elements of Eastern esotericism and Eastern thought coming through the philosophy of Heraclitus. And that's why he seems so paradoxical, is that he's seen to speak in these parables or these strange, he doesn't seem to quite fit in with the many of the Western philosophers that we know, that we have a lot more information on. We have a lot more of their writings and their teachings, like Aristotle, Plato, Socrates. He's kind of this bridge between, in a very real sense, Heraclitus was a bridge between the Eastern mind and the Western mind. And that's why he seems paradoxical, because the worldview from the East, it can seem quite paradoxical, quite different, right? It's a completely opposite worldview, right? If you're born into the world from the Western perspective, you come into this world, right? But from the Eastern perspective, as Alan Watts so accurately pointed out, you actually come out of the world. So you're seen, in the Eastern sense, you're seen as coming out of the world, right? You're not coming from somewhere else. In the West, you come from somewhere else, and you come into this world. But that's not the worldview of the East, right? So Heraclitus, being of this, educated, from Turkey and educated in under the Persian Empire in this Eastern, very real Eastern way of seeing the world through the Eastern religious philosophy. The way his mind works was in a sense straddling. He had a foot in two worlds, right? Because he's in Turkey, and Turkey isn't in the East, but the influences of the Persian Empire are most certainly from the Indus Valley and that area, right? So a culture influenced by a Persian spiritual tradition, which made no distinction at all between religion and magic, right? Remember, in the East, religion and magic, to the Zoroastrians and many others in that area, there's no difference between, right? There's no distinction between religion and magic. It's pretty much, it's the same thing. So bringing into Europe a widely distributed and decentralized operative theology, right? An operative theology is finding your own divine light in your own specific way, right? There's no one way to do it, right? As prescribed by the different Western Christian religions would tell you, do this, the Catholics would tell you, do this, say 7 Hail Marys, you're saved, go to the, confession, do all that stuff, right? But an operative theology is discovering your own divine light, and that's an Eastern idea, right? So this operative theology, this going your own way, finding your own divine light, right? This really did catch on. This is part of the esoteric circles that are alive and well today. The secret societies that we have throughout the West carry this tradition of finding your own divine light, right? They had to remain secret because of the persecution of the Catholic Church historically, right? There's less of that now, but also there's certain teachings in the esoteric circles, in secret societies, they're just completely lost on people and completely misinterpreted, because there's this way of thinking and interpreting spirituality and religion in the West that is totally doesn't exist in the East, right? So one operative theology found in the West, of course, is Mithraism, which encouraged men to freely discover their own divine spiritual God essence. It gave you a starting point, and then after that starting point, it basically helped you realize your own divine essence, right? And Mithraism was a rival, quite a formidable rival to Christianity well into the 4th century AD. And even then, I would argue, because they found many Mithraic, what do you want to call them, places of worship or places of contemplation or ceremony underneath Catholic churches, right? There's a very famous one in Rome near the Vatican, which I'll cover in a future part. I don't think I've covered it yet, but there have been a lot of videos, so if I already covered it, then please forgive me. So in the Greek translation of the Bible, okay, word is understood to mean or refer to logos, right? Logos, or the logos, is what pre-Socratic philosopher Heraclitus established as an all-encompassing universal order, okay? This order manifests in our civilization as words, laws, and, of course, the Bible, right? This magic book of spells. The most universal principle of the Logos, or the order of the cosmos, according to Heraclitus, was this: there is nothing permanent except change. This sentiment is nothing short of a descriptor of ultimate reality, right? Things come into being and they come out of being, right? Very, very foundational idea, right? It's not shouldn't be a groundbreaking idea for anyone. It's a very old idea. Everyone intuitively unconsciously knows this. Such recognition of the world as it is an essential prerequisite to understanding word magic. So that one simple point, that one sentiment, there is nothing permanent except change. That in and of itself is a magical process, right? Things come into the world and things go away. They dissolve back into the nothingness, right? Back into the void, right? So it really is in a kind of a more campy, practical sense. In the Hollywood magic sense, it's now you see it, now you don't, right? So it definitely is. It's a magic trick, right? So now let's get into the actual etymology. Now we did talk about the etymology of the word magi and its origins, but we'll get into the etymology and the definition. So in the truest sense of the word, magic is the art of influencing or predicting events and producing marvels using hidden natural forces. And by the way, these definitions are these are actually, I got these from etymonline.com, the etymology site. So these aren't necessarily definitions by the strictest definition, but these are, this is kind of a history of the word magi and the word magic here on the left. Okay. So word magic is defined. So we've already talked about magic being this art of influencing or predicting events, right? Using hidden natural forces. So word magic is defined as using speech or writing to influence events as to affect a desired outcome, right? So it's essentially the same thing. The only difference is you're using this technology, which we know as language, right? Which we know as the written word or the spoken word. So just like the Eskimo or the Himba tribe of Namibia, Namibia. Just like this tribe of Namibia, word magic or magic in general can only come about by close observation of the natural world and the logical presumptions made about hidden forces causing such manifestations in physical reality. Okay? What this means is the Eskimo, for example, had to be extremely tuned in to their world, to their environment. Their survival depended on it, right? And so to be tuned in to your world means you can perceive more than, obviously much more than someone who doesn't survive and live in that environment every day, of course. But this keen observation is what your survival depends upon, right? Well, you can, in our modern society, we've pretty much lost this ability to really tune in to things. We're kind of numbed out with all of this technology in a very real way. I've heard, you may know about Sadhguru. He's a great teacher. He would talk about when he was younger. I think he's got to be in his 60s now. But when he was younger, in his teens and 20s, he would go into the forest by himself at night with no moon out, no flashlight, no nothing. And he would do this enough times that he could then begin to see in the dark. And that sounds crazy, right? But if your body uses, it's like a use it or lose it thing, right? Your body uses what you tune into. If you start using your eyes more, you use your eyes in the dark, your body goes, oh, well, gosh, he's using this a lot now. I guess we should devote resources to this. That's just how the body works. If you're not using a part of your body, the body just goes, well, not using that, going to let that go, right? And so this is an example, or this is how I explain this this understanding of word magic goes hand in hand with close observation. So if you fancy yourself an apprentice and you want to be a magician someday, you have to develop the skill of keen observation. You have to know that your body can actually do this. You have to know that your eyes can adjust, that your mind can adjust to thinking and to perceiving in a different way that you currently don't think is possible. It's very much possible, right? So that's the point with tuning in, right? Is this close observation, because you don't really get anywhere unless you're willing to closely observe. And it could be the most mundane things in your life. It could be things you take for granted all the time, but if you tune into them, you start to notice different things. And it's if you can develop that capacity, you develop intense focus, and that intense focus is such an important part of magic. You can't be a magician. You can't be a competent magician without it, right? So humanity is a natural manifestation coming about in the universe from the occulted processes of nature, right? We are this fruiting body of the processes, the hidden processes. When I say occulted, of course, I mean hidden. The hidden processes of nature. From this nothingness, all of a sudden everythingness comes out, including us, right? Given enough time. The same hidden process which causes all things in the universe to manifest, to come about, right? And simultaneously decay or dissolve into the same gulf of ethereal originating nothingness we may call source, right? We come in from this void, and when I say we, I mean everything in the universe. And slowly it goes back into the void, sometimes quickly if you're going into a black hole, right? So it should be natural that we as human beings, born of this mysterious transformative force, right? We don't really understand it from the human mind, but we are born of this force. So we ourselves should seek to emulate or imitate the processes of transformation, even if we don't understand them, right? Just like a child imitates a parent, we humans are both children of and students of this natural force. To be a student is just to tune in, is just to pay attention. Right? So in this way, it is not difficult to grasp that our entire reality exists as varying levels of magic, right? At this point, we have explored the foundational ideas by which we can begin to understand the meaning of word magic in the most universal sense possible. Magic, or magic in the historical sense, and by the way, I chose not to use the Crowley spelling of magic with the K at the end. Originally I did, but I thought, I know that Crowley did that to differentiate magic of the seeker from stage magic, right? But I really think that everything, if you tune in, everything is magical. Everything has magical properties if you can really tune in. If you're willing to go there, if you're willing to go deep enough. So in my mind, there's no point in changing the spelling. But I wanted to acknowledge that here and at least show that in case there were some questions about the spelling, right? Some people get hung up on that. And I kind of did as well. So just wanted to address that. So in the historical senses, the historical sense, magic refers to the magi or priests When I say historical, I mean original. The original sense refers to the magi or priests of the Mazdan way, the Zoroastrian religion of ancient Persia, who made no distinction between religion and magic. This understanding of the world was lost in the West thousands of years ago. It was brought to the West, but it was largely rejected, right? And there were reasons for that. However, it has always been with us, right? Just because something is rejected, just because something truthful doesn't come out, doesn't mean the truth just is invalidated, doesn't mean it goes away, right? And now, this view of the world, this sentiment that everything in the world, including magic and religion, there really is no distinction, that is making a comeback. More and more people are looking to the East. They're looking to the mystery traditions of the East, right? To kind of fill in the gaps. Because, to be honest, there's a lot of people that are turned off to Christianity in general in the West, and yet they say that they are spiritual, they're just not religious, right? Which is totally fine. I get why not a lot of people are in love with religion in the West. It makes perfect sense, right? Totally get that. And so, in the tradition which comes to us from the Magi of ancient Persia, the understanding of the divine God, or the divine God, Shiva, nature, whatever you wish to call it, is simply this. It's the generative force of creation which emanates from the universe. It creates all things and causes them to go back to the void, right? Things are created, simultaneously destroyed. Your particular way of coming to this understanding is completely your own. There's no single religion that can do this for you. Realizing one's own divinity often results in one starting their own religion. Not always. Usually not, hopefully. Not following the spiritual path created by someone else, right? So, every so often, it's actually more common than you think. Some person will find their divine light, and they may not be ready for it, and then they have this vision, and they want to tell everyone about it, and that's great. And some people are legitimately like, wow, this person's really special, and they follow that person, and they become like a Christ-like figure or a prophet of some sort, and then a religion's built around them. Right? There's a lot of people like this in the world, a lot more than you think. Go watch that Vice documentary about the Russian guy who has like 250, 300, probably more. But I just saw he lives in a commune with like 250 people. I think it was like in Oregon or something. So my point is, you can start looking into these traditions and find your own spiritual path. You can start by a path created by someone else and then find your own way, right? Start with the Buddha or start with, but it's at some point, you've got to realize that unless you want to shave your head and move to Tibet or what have you, great, that's great. But finding your own divine light is really all you need to do in whichever way you want to do that. So your particular way of coming to this understanding is your own, but having help along the way is a good idea, right? There's people that came to thousands of years before 4, 5, 6,000 years before we got here that figured a lot of interesting shit out. And they've got some interesting things to say. And so I think that's a great point. It's a great starting point. I mean, why reinvent the wheel, right? So a good religion provides you the training wheels to find your own personal spiritual connection, if that's what you're looking for. There are other reasons to be part of an organized religion also, right? I'm not knocking organized religion. There's a sense of community. People help each other. There's a lot of good things about being in a group, belonging to a community, belonging to a group, especially a high vibrational, positive group, right? It just feels good. And everyone wants to feel good, right? I know I do. Whether one is a dualist or of the non-dual mind, if one believes in a God, is agnostic, or is a hardcore atheist, the fact remains unchanged. We are all the co-creators of our reality, and therefore magicians at many levels of our existence. If it is understood by the seeker that everything in the world and the processes which cause it to come about are indeed magic, then it should also be understood that our existence is transformational in its essence, right? That's only a basic fact, right? The basic observation. It's logical. This transformation that's occurring, this unfolding of our reality, is constant and eternal, as far as we can tell, right? As far as we know, at least. If there's only one thing you can learn from this presentation, it should be this. Understanding the way of the universe means embracing the constant change and temporary nature of all things. In other words, seeing and accepting the world's true nature as it really is. Easier said than done, right? Letting go of desire for things to stay the same is to embrace how things truly are, right? Which is to say, they are ephemeral or temporary. One day the earth will be gone, right? One day the sun will be gone. Holding on and attempting to control things to remain unchanged or as we wish them to be fully contradicts the natural order, right? The failure to recognize this can lead to sorcery or make you an unwitting slave to desire. You're always desiring an outcome. You're going to be you're going to be on this wheel of suffering, right? There's that saying, expectation is the mother of all disappointments. Right? This isn't to say don't expect good things. Of course you should expect good things, right? Of course you should desire good things, right? But ultimately, any desire for something to stay as it is, something to this desire that this sense of, oh, things just, this changed and I don't like it, and gosh, I wish it was the way it was before. Things aren't what they used to be, and that sentiment is only going to, it's going to take up extra cycles in your mind and extra bandwidth, and it doesn't help you. It actually just slows you down, right?